Dear friends, first of all, let me thank the Icelandic Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gunnar Bragi Sveinsson, and Minister Tan and Ambassador Kim for their very comprehensive and very interesting and challenging speeches. I know Minister Tan said that we had perhaps talked too much at this forum, but we decided to have this a dinner dialogue, which means that we will have a dialogue towards the end. And some people were surprised that I was going to chair that dialogue, be a kind of talk host to the end of this forum. But then I considered that since we see in the chair country of the Arctic Council that talk hosts are becoming perhaps presidents, there might be a high time for me then also to start practicing the talk host role. This is a joke my American friends will understand and appreciate. I see that from Mead's expression. But on a more serious note, my role here now, before I make the closing remarks of this forum, is to invite all of you in the audience to make a comment on the speeches or to put questions to the three representatives who have, in a very comprehensive and fascinating way, challenged us to look ahead and see the road for Arctic cooperation. So, in that extent, the floor is open, and there are microphones that will be passed around the room, and you can either put a question to the three speakers or you can make a comment. But before I open it up, let me support what the last speaker said, that he emphasized that although the Arctic Council has, in these first 20 years, gradually accepted observer states, it has not perhaps thought out thoroughly what will be the long-term role for the observer states. Let's also remember that the list of observer states is probably not final. I know from my own conversations that Mexico is considering very actively to apply for observer state. I know the United Arab Emirates is also considering to apply for observer states, and I'm sure there are others. I have sometimes told the story of my good friend Michel Rocard, the former Prime Minister of France, who was appointed by Sarkozy as his special representative to the polar region and especially to the Arctic, and then reappointed by President Hollande. And as the Norwegian Arctic ambassador said earlier today, it's only in the last few weeks that the representatives of the observer states were allowed to say something at the meeting of the Arctic Council. But Michel Rocard said in Paris 2 years ago, where we shared the platform in a conference, complaining about that he had come to many of the Arctic Council meetings but never been allowed to speak. And then he added this unforgettable sentence: France is not accustomed not to be allowed to speak. So we all face the challenge of how are we going to bring the global community to the table in a constructive way while maintaining the sovereignty and the authority of the Arctic states over these territories. And I think the forum here in Singapore has demonstrated, if anyone doubted, the very constructive role that the representatives of the many countries outside the 8 Arctic states have expressed here today in terms of science, business, sea routes, technical experience, and now this evening extraordinary political insight and diplomatic recommendations. The forum here in Singapore has demonstrated to all of us that we in the Arctic can benefit enormously from the constructive engagement with people and governments and organizations in the Asian countries. And we saw at the Arctic Circle Assembly in Reykjavik, through the contribution by the President of France, François Hollande, by the German delegation, which was appointed by Chancellor Merkel, and by the representatives from Great Britain and other European non-permanent members of the Arctic Council, the constructive contribution from the leading European countries. The Arctic cooperation will become better, more constructive, and endure more thoroughly in the light of the great challenges by having the continuous engagement and enhanced role of the countries in Asia and Europe and from other parts of the world. So, the floor is now open for anyone who wants to raise their hands and either make a comment or put a question. And please don't hesitate to be unorthodox in your statement. The purpose of a dialogue is that people can say things that have not been said before.